Welcome in, everyone. This is Dan French, the Dan French Show. Today we got a good one to talk about, and it's about the jobs report that came out. Also, what's going on with inflation and consumer confidence and investor confidence. We're going to talk about the jobs report. You know, the numbers that came out weren't so good, and a lot of investors really look at this, and a lot of politicians and people in office look at this and say either the economy's doing well or not doing well, and they really jump on these numbers. A lot of times they're revised. And so you look at that part of it, and then when you look at the overall numbers itself, a lot of consumers, a lot of investors may not pay attention as much because they're waiting to see what the revised number is. But I'm going to tell you that these job numbers are not as significant and as important as it is for investors to be not just have confidence in the economy, but want to go ahead and invest and create jobs in the economy based off those numbers. So let's get right into it. You know, President Trump was asked recently on the low job numbers that came out for August, and we've seen a decline, and a lot of economists out there saying that we're a 50% chance of getting into a recession. And so I'm going to listen to what President Trump had to say about the jobs report and how bad it was, and then I'm going to come back and give you my opinion, talk a little bit more about what he had to say. So let's listen to what Trump had to say.
Mr. President, we learned this morning that we've lost 78,000 manufacturing jobs this year. How do you explain it?
Well, one thing we have is, we have the interest rates are too high. That was, a matter of the Fed. But the other thing is so many different elements aren't included yet. And one of the things we've learned, and we learned that the hard way, watching over the last few months, are the corrections that people have been making. They'll say you're losing jobs, and then they say, by the way, we have a correction a month later of, 100,000 jobs are missing. They actually had a correction once of 850,000 jobs. We're building, they've started building all of these factories and plants, including car factories. Car factories are coming back. We lost more than 50% of our car production over the years, and I think we're going to get all of it back. It's coming back in really rapidly. Really, we're building a lot of car plants. Indiana, places that you don't think of it so much, are taken, but also Detroit, lots of places it's coming in where I think we're going to get everything. We've lost it over a period of 40 years, and I think we're going to get it all back in a very short period of time. And big ones, big plants, incredible plants that were never going to come back. Without the tariffs, they wouldn't have come back. And I think without the election on November 5th, they wouldn't come back.
Excellent. So you heard what President Trump had to say about the jobs report. He pretty much said, let's look and wait until a year from now. He's been coming out saying the palaces of genius with new tech jobs, industrial jobs. It's going to be keeping this economy booming. And it all might happen. I mean, you look at this, and he's saying it's a period where you have to kind of detox, right? You got to get the economy and kind of wipe everything out and start over. And, when you come out and people see that, or investors see that the economy is slowing down, jobs are not doing well, numbers are declining, it does have somewhat of a hit back on the president, right? As far as it doesn't look good for presidents, because you look at it, presidents are like the CFO. If the economy's doing well, they get all the credit, right? Hey, president's in office, he's doing great, the economy's booming. And if it's not doing well, he's also going to get the blame. Now, what he's doing here is he's deflecting that part of it, saying, hey, you know what? The Bureau of Labor Statistics came out. They keep revising numbers. It's not true. And if it is the true numbers, it doesn't matter. The big goal and the big thing that's going on is going to be from a year from now, when all of these things that he's put in place with tariffs and everything else that is happening right now, it's going to contribute to a booming economy. Now, it's interesting because the Fed's fund rate is going to be a very key factor, because if Jerome Powell comes out, he's come out and criticized him, saying Jerome too slow Powell. He's not lowering the Fed's fund rate. I feel there's a reason for that. He's not lowering it because I think that with the inflation report that came out at 2.9%, it's still not hitting that long-term inflation number of 2%. And so if you lower it, it will push up demand. When you lower rates, borrowing gets cheaper, consumers spend more, businesses expand, and hiring ticks up. But the downside is inflation. And, you look at mortgages and housing. It's inflation. And I think that's why they have not done that yet. And when you look at Trump, he wants to do that because he's getting blame for the economy not it's slowing down or just stagnant. A lot of people, like I said, talking about possible recession. And so those are not good things that are going at Trump. And this is maybe they're using this as a political position to criticize Trump and his leadership. Maybe that's true. I think it comes down to investor confidence. Let's go over some of the numbers that came out, and we'll just kind of talk about what I've seen and some of the things that's come out with the jobs report, the wage earnings, and also inflation. And then, we'll talk a little bit about where that's going. So let's go ahead and look at the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate went up to 4.3%, which is high, Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so you're seeing an unemployment number creep up. That does not look good, right? Our economy, when you see that, everybody's first impression of that, especially investors, to invest, if you're going to invest money, the reason you're doing that is because you think that the economy is doing well. When you look at the U.S. wage growth, 3.7 decline percent. That's not good. Less spending power. That means people, non-farms payroll, average consumers out there are not going to spend. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Fed does. And Trump, he's come out and he's talked about it. If the Fed doesn't do this, you're going to consistently see an economy that's not doing well. The jobs report came out in August, only 22,000 new hires in August, 13,000 jobs lost revised in June. And so you're looking at these reports going, man, this is not good. August unemployment numbers, like we just talked about, is up 4.3%. What industries are cutting the most in August? Well, pharmaceutical, financial, retail, nonprofits, technology, media and news. These jobs are getting cut. And, he's already, looked at this economy and said, we're not doing as good as we thought we were, right? Or doing as what we should be. And so when you look at these jobs and all these losses that's going on, it's a very interesting position between Trump and the Fed because he's pushing to get this done. He's been consistently criticizing Jerome Powell and the Fed for not lowering the Fed's fund rate. And if he does lower it, it could stimulate the economy, but it also could drive inflation. And the problem is we're at 2.9%. You look at consumer price index in July, 2.7% year-over-year change by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Okay? So that's a big number. You have to pay attention to that. 0.9% month-to-month change, producer price index in July. So producer prices since June, everything is up. Inflation. Costs are going up. Everybody's worried about that inflation number. U.S. inflation, 2.7% right there. You can see that. And it's now increased to 2.9% if you're talking about personal consumption expenditures, which is core PCE. That's the true number. You see that 2.9%? That's a number that is really, in my opinion, judged. Core year-over-year PCE index is up. That means inflation is up. So if the Fed lowers that, potentially we may see higher inflation. There is even a possibility that if that happens, stagflation may occur. So I get it. President Trump wants to open these things up. He's got tariffs. What's the impact of what tariffs are doing? Well, tariffs raise imports, right? Higher import costs. Inflation risks. There we go again. Immigration crackdown. Cuts to federal and state jobs. Delayed payoff for manufacturing investments. The uncertainty behind tariffs. I mean, these are the charts here. Firms can play long-term investments. Hiring is delayed. Costs for businesses go up. Less hiring. So it's interesting that when you see the long-term position that he's in, are these really going to have these tariffs have an impact in the positive direction for interest rates? Also for just job numbers and inflation. Are all these things going to really have palaces of genius and the economy booming next year? He may be right, but we don't know. And so these are all uncertainty things that we're seeing with the Fed, with investors. And that is where I'm going with this. Why this is so important is it's the psychological impact. What's bigger than jobs numbers, reports, data? Yeah, it's all important. It's the investor confidence, the consumer confidence. If consumers don't have additional money to spend, they're not going to spend. The economy is going to be stagnant. It's the same with investors. It's probably bigger for investors because if investors don't see a positivity or confidence in an economy, they're not going to invest into money if the rates are too high as far as the Fed's fund rate or business loans, student loans, car loans, credit cards. If those things are high, you can't extend credit. Buyers are not going to, go out and spend. And you look at investors and they're just going to maybe take their money and go into other places like safe havens, like bonds and other assets. So it's very important to understand that the confidence in the economy and how this is portrayed in the media is really how the direction of the economy is portrayed. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'd like to hear your side of it. Do you think the economy is going to get better? Do you think it's going to get worse? Do you think we're going to go to a recession? Let me know. I'm Dan French. This is the Dan French Show. We'll see you guys at the next one.